Perfect. I think for the most part, everybody's here. We may be waiting on one or two others, but welcome to the Wethersfield Town Council meeting for Tuesday, January 17th. And Councilman Biggs, if you would do us the honor tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Feels like we haven't been back here in a while. So thank you all for coming. Sue, if you would do us the honor of attendance tonight, please.
Councilor Biggs?
Present.
Councilor Carbone?
Here.
Councilor Forrest? Councilor Hill?
Here.
Councilor Lesser?
Here.
Councilor O'Connor?
Here.
Councilor Pentelo?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Mazzarella?
Here.
Mayor Rell?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. We do not have any hearings tonight. I don't believe there's any on the agenda. We do have general comments from the public. There's some folks in the public here today, or tonight with us. This is the first of two public comments. Each one is 5 minutes. You have one coming up right now and one at the end of the meeting. Please state your name and your address. And I don't know if we have a sign-up sheet.
Yes, there is.
And there's a sign-up sheet, so if you don't mind signing up, again, state your name and address, and you're limited to 5 minutes. Talk on anything you want. Yes, sir.
Nick Rashu, 125 Walcott Hill Road. Welcome back, everyone. Few quick things I wanted to highlight. And first of all is what I can only imagine is somewhat inefficient, but in reading through the town council packet that was released, based on the ARPA funds currently, there's $4.941 million approved based on several dates from, I believe, June of last year, maybe some in April of last year. And currently out of that, only $749,000 has been expended. My humble request is, first of all, that there's an actual audit of actual expenditures related to those projects, and secondly, figure out where these things stand. I can't for the life of me understand how there could be less than 20% of $4.9 million, or approximately 20% that's actually been expended in the last 6 months. The vast majority of these projects were from June and July of 2022. Nothing's happened in 6 months. It's shocking to me. The vast majority of the two things that were spent were the Hanmer boiler, which was an absolute necessity, and there are assessments across the board that haven't been done. I honestly cannot fathom these departments not doing what they've been approved to do 6-8 months ago. It's shocking to me. If I said, here's $200,000, go find something to do with it for 6 months, and just sat there and said, got other things to do, is amazing. The next I'd like to highlight, which I'm honestly shocked, and it takes quite a bit to shock me now, on the consent agenda, there's actually an 8th motion that actually amends the flag policy that was up to much debate and much commentary, I guess, and my own commentary, my own frustration with how things had gone. And right now there's a motion to amend that allows the flying of the pride flag for June. And the fact that that's on a consent agenda, not subject to public comment, not subject to council comment, is shocking to me. It's on my packet. I've got it on the PDF. 8th motion. It says to amend.
It may be included in the minutes.
Yeah, it might be the.
On the
Yeah,
agenda.
that's,
If it's on the minutes, then I apologize. I thought it was on the consent agenda at the top.
The minutes are on the consent agenda. The minutes are. Yeah. But not.
So, all right, that's my fault. I read it as it was part of the consent agenda, that there was a motion to do that. My apologies. And then lastly, in what I'll say is, again, somewhat shocking to me, is on the Harvey Fuller Apartments, there was a bid in 2019 that was brought to this council in November of 2021. The bid was never updated. And now for the block grant that's being applied for through Connecticut, we have to waive fees. What I noticed is there's not one area which mentions a dollar amount. How much in fees is the town giving up, and how much of that $1.533 million, or about $48,551 per apartment, where's the money coming from? How much in fees are we losing, and what exactly does that mean? I believe having a bid from 2019 after earlier, which actually, if you look at the road discussion, says that because things have gone up now, we've got to spend between $66,000 and now it's somehow $72,000 for road fixtures, I guess. And somehow that 2019 bid is okay. We did a block grant. If we get $1.533 million, where's the rest of it going to come? We hear for the past 3 years that inflation has gone up by 20%. Where's that extra $300,000 going to come from? So my apologies for misreading the consent agenda. I would like some clarity, at least around the ARPA funding, whose feet are being held to the fire to actually get this done on time. I know it has to be allocated by the end of 2024, I believe, but the fact that nothing's been done with the exception of the Hanover boiler and a couple of the larger projects that we're already on the hook for is absolutely appalling to me.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Doug Sudell from 323 Main Street. I'm here to just talk about the schools, the elementary schools, and sort of bring that back to light. Post-referendum, I'm working or part of a small group of folks who are engaged trying to sort of figure out what to do next, and just citizens in general. And it occurred to us, certainly to me, that this is a really unique time, given that the governor's budget, or governor is trying to figure out what his budget will be, and he's made several proclamations. He wants to create a middle class tax cut. He wants to focus on economic development, which is something he's certainly done from Jump Street, and now seems like a time when we collectively, some citizens from Wethersfield, are asking the governor to focus on school reimbursement rates. This is an incredible opportunity that I would ask each of you to sort of spend some of your political capital on, because the governor can increase the amount of reimbursement rate, or increase the rate that the state of Connecticut reimburses at for new builds, as well as for renovation as new. And it could make a huge impact on the cost of the elementary schools, or rebuilding the elementary schools in Wethersfield. It hits on every one of the governor's points. It obviously focuses on economic development. Building is economic development. It focuses on education, something he's talked about improving. And it would be an incredible cut to middle-class taxes, right? We all know how much the referendum was slated to cost the middle class in Wethersfield. And so to ask the governor, each of you individually, I would ask, and to reach out to those of you who you can ask the governor, and Senator Fonfara, who I believe is the head of the Finance Committee, and Representative Bayo, to focus on this, because it could make an absolutely huge impact for the residents of Wethersfield. It could allow us to take another look at the referendum that failed, I'm sure in large part because of the cost. There are certainly other reasons why it failed, and I think all of us want to sort of dive into that. I can't imagine there's any doubt you guys move this forward, that there's a need for new schools in Wethersfield. And so I would ask each of you to look into this. This is sort of a unique time where the state has an incredible surplus, where the governor has suggested that he wants to make tax cuts for middle-class residents, and nothing hits home more than cutting the cost of building schools when residents are willing to put in a large portion of that cost on their own. And so, so please take the time. Many of us have in Wethersfield now. There's sort of information circulating about how to reach out to the governor, Senator Fonfara and Representative Bayo. I would ask each of you to use whatever political capital you feel in your own judgment makes sense to dive into this. Get other Wethersfield residents to write the governor. I would ask you to each write the governor and ask for an increase. A small increase would mean a lot. A large increase would be incredible for the residents of Wethersfield, and not only Wethersfield, any other town who's committed to improving education, focused on safety, focused on improving the welfare of their children. This is a benefit to all Connecticut residents, but it's a unique time for the town of Weathersfield, and I would hope that each of you could spend a little of your own political capital and share this more broadly, if possible, to other residents, so they could do the same and share their own input with the governor and Senator Fonfair and Rep. Baio. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Young?
Good evening, Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. I too took notice of the Harvey Fuller project that is on the agenda for, they want to have the fees exempt, and they don't want to pay it. We have to think about this for a moment. The Weathersfield Housing Authority gets loads of money. They contribute very little to us. I don't think they contribute anything as far as taxes go. And I would think that if there was an opportunity that we could at least collect some fees for some work they're going to do, I think that's what we should be doing. To pass it by would be foolish. For one, like I say, they don't contribute anything to this town money-wise. And this is the only way you're going to get any kind of money out of them. The legal way, because otherwise, legally, they're free as birds. They pay no taxes on all those homes that they own, all those buildings they own, nothing. And the services that they use. So I would definitely recommend you turning them down on this fee that they want to be forgiven, or whatever you want to call it. And yes, you have a lot of money. I've said, for this American Rescue Plan, which was one heck of a giveaway to the towns and the states. It just loaded them up with money. Thank goodness to COVID. And we know all about COVID. We're all still hiding from it. And we all lost every town lost a lot of people. And what's surprising is how eager the local governments were to grab whatever money they could get with the word COVID in it and spend it. And while you were spending that money, look what's happened to our inflation. All of us citizens are getting hammered by inflation. And have you received your electric bill this month? I got mine. My natural gas bill went up too pretty good. I don't know why. 2 people living in a house, and it's more than doubled. So I don't know what the heck's going on, Mayor. We somehow need to cut back, and that means those companies like CNG and Eversource also need to cut back. This is pretty tough on everybody. And but anyway, getting back to the rescue money. I don't see any improvements from where I stand of this rescue money. I read a lot of places you're fixing the police station with generator, and you're doing this, and you're doing a lot of these improvements on the fields. But that doesn't benefit the rest of us. You should have been putting miles and miles of new highway down with that money. I don't see anything happening. As a matter of fact, before COVID, I was heading into Hartford on Wilkett Hill Road, up where that State of Connecticut Labor Building is, or whatever that building is right after you go under the highway, Route 15. That was a very extremely bumpy road, and it's still bumpy. Last time I've been up there. And now we're heading on 3 years. And if you recall, 3 years ago, before COVID, Mr. Jarek, who you praise, 2 meetings ago, he was talking about fixing that highway, and it's still not fixed. I wouldn't have praised him for anything. I would have shown him where the door is. But anyway, you guys spent so much money in areas that only benefited special interests, and the rest of us got zipola. That's my opinion, because when I look at this little spreadsheet that was in the agenda, we normal citizens got zip, okay? Anyway, we have also some other issue that I want to talk about that was in the agenda tonight, for tonight, and it was called the purchasing procedure. Are we all aware of that? Incorporation and powers, Chapter 1, Section 713, purchasing procedures. I know a lot about how you set up a vendor for purchasing items from your company, or in this case, it's purchasing from the town of Weathersfield. And I questioned, and I remember during COVID, some young lady got on the phone on your system and talked about purchasing procedures. And I remember, Mayor, you made a comment, you see how good it is? We have all this protection. We have all this stuff that we don't have to worry about money being lost or being something happened bad. Well, you know, my question is on this, even though this is about business, how in the world do you handle when a private citizen asks to be paid for something that he or she bought and gets a check from the town of Weathersfield, and there's no record except for the check? That is something you need to look at. You probably have this okay with businesses, but what about that citizen who got the check in his hand and walked away?
Okay,
And
Mr. Young,
And
your 5 minutes are up.
nobody approved it, Mayor. Thank you.
I don't see our finance director in here, but I think we can have a conversation with him on that. Yep. We'll look into that. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda. Item 2B, council reports from boards and commissions. Any liaison reports tonight? Councilman Lesser?
Thank you, Mayor. Last Monday, January 9th, I attended the Weathersfield Advisory Committee for People with Disabilities. It was a very short meeting. It lasted a half hour or less. They went through their calendar for the year of events. The most significant thing that impacts us is they are going to be submitting a budget proposal for, I believe, $2,000. That's what was said at the meeting, and they will outline what their needs are for that money, and they hope to recoup that money through their activities. But apparently it's going to be in their budget. We'll get that when we see it. But other than that, not too much other than they went through their activities. And that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Biggs?
Thank you, Mayor. This past Wednesday, at the Veterans Commission meeting, same thing, talked about the budget, trying to get ahead of the curve, which I appreciate, but they'll be working with Park and Rec, obviously, to allocate their budget request, if any. They also spoke about the Memorial Day Parade, emphasized that the committee for the Memorial Day Parade has dwindled, so we are seeking as many volunteers as possible to help put that on. As we all know, last year was the first year in 3 years or so that we actually were able to do a parade, and it's only able to be done with volunteers. So if you are willing and able, please contact the Parks and Rec. We will take any volunteers possible to help us with that planning and organization. And that was all.
Thank you. Anybody else with anything? I'll just report it was not this past Monday, but last week, the Housing Authority did meet and we discussed, which I'll go into later on, the item on the agenda for the state requirement for waiving of fees. We'll have a conversation on that, but this is really something that, having gone through the grant application, the request from the state is pretty explicit in the need for the waiving of the fees for this. I think this council, most everybody except possibly Councilwoman Carbone, remembers that this was before us last year when Kate Forcier, the executive director, came in and talked about the pipes that are below the slabs and the need for work. So while this may not directly impact, the community as a whole in Weathersfield, the Housing Authority did talk about the effect that this would have on the residents of the Harvey Fuller complex. And, they did discuss the need for this and putting it on the agenda. They also talked about, and every year they look at the raises or raise of the rates or rental rates for their units. And while it's, as Mr. Young had said, everybody's going through a difficult time right now, the Housing Authority did unfortunately make the decision to raise some rents on the units of the Housing Authority. They are minimal rent increases, and hopefully it does not have an impact on the residents living in those. But with everything else, utilities, maintenance, cost of repairs that are going on right now, the Housing Authority did deem it necessary to do a minimal rent increase for their residents of the Housing Authority. And that was passed and adopted. I can get you, if anybody needs specific numbers for, different units and different size units, what the corresponding rent increases are. I'll be happy to get that from Kate Forcier. Seeing no other reports from boards and commissions, we'll move on to council comments. Anybody with any council comments? Councilman Biggs?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to put some information out. I was contacted by a local foster care recruiter. They're hosting an event here in Weathersfield from the Village of Families and Children, where they're seeking anyone that has been interested in fostering children. There's a dire need in the greater Hartford area. They are hosting an event at Max Bebo's January 25th at 6:30 p.m. So if there's any residents there that have ever considered or just, had the thought in their mind, this will give them the information they need to see if it's something for them to do. And another thing wanted to kind of put out there. I wrote this thing up. I just wanted to share with everyone. So as many of you know, I am a Navy supply officer serving the Navy Reserves. Within the military community, sometimes when we're asked if we're ready, our response typically says always ready. With that being said, I have been tagged for deployment in the coming months, and I will have to resign my position as Weathersfield Town Council. So when I was asked just a few words to say to you all, when I was asked a few years ago if I would consider Town Council, I'll say that my response was just like in the Navy, always ready. Let's go. I was encouraged by a very supportive community to consider the position, and this was my first time actually taking something of the community in this capacity. And it was honestly the faith and the confidence in the community, my wife and kids, that really urged me to step into the role. It's been a blessing serving the residents here in this beautiful historic town, and I'm very grateful. I'm grateful to sit here. I think I was able to perform my duties with just diligence, respect, determination to really get the job done. And, asking and answering those difficult questions that we always get. But whereas I believe I made quite a positive contribution during my time here in town, I honestly want to say our achievements were because of the team effort. I cannot take any credit alone because we cannot do anything without each other. And I appreciate all of you for working with me to get the job done, whether it's budgets, speaking with students, supporting the veterans, as you all know I'm passionate about, and increasing our neighborhood safety, which we're still on the incline with. We have made remarkable strides, and even our work continues to manifest. So to my friends sitting here today, I just ask you continue to make these great decisions. Remember, this position is service to all of our townspeople. Our job is to work on behalf of all of them that call themselves residents of Wethersfield. No matter the side of town, no matter how long they lived here, no matter what their beliefs are, take a second, have the conversation, return the email, the phone call, and just hear out what the constituents have to say. So just thank you to the residents, thank you to my friends here, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to serve the town. But this will likely, more than likely, be my last meeting. I had to write it because if I ad-libbed, I would have probably cried.
Any comments? Councilman Pentelow?
Yeah, easy. Go ahead. I get it first. Yeah, just kind of in response, man, I'll keep it very brief. I'll miss you. You were an absolute pleasure to work with always, and even when you disagreed, you always did it with class. So I'll definitely miss you. But good luck to you in your deployment, and as always, man, thank you for your service.
Councilman O'Connor?
I echo Councilor Pennell's comments, with the exception of disagree, because I don't think you've ever disagreed with me. But there's two ways to say thank you for your service and thank you for your service, because both of them are appreciated. I enjoyed serving with you. I think you know that. And I will definitely miss you. And I don't know what else to say, because I didn't know this was happening, but, you know, the country got a good one and we lost a good one. So good luck and God bless.
Councilman Lesser?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Councilor Pentelow and Councilor O'Connor said it well, but I want to say how grateful I am to have served with you. You're a tremendous person, and I've become friends with you, and that's worth so much to me, and I know that will continue. And I know your commitment to Wethersfield will continue, but now you're serving the country in a bigger capacity. And you've made a real difference in town. Veterans issues, you're always a leader there. Traffic calming and safety in the community. The town has really benefited from your service, and we've benefited from working together. And I'm so happy to call you my friend, but thank you for all you've done, so much appreciated.
Is there Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I don't want to sound repetitive here. I mean, running out of compliments, but yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. You're just a fine gentleman, even though you might not agree with some of the things I've said or whatever. It's been a real nice run, and sorry to see you go. Wish you the best and your family the best.
Thank you. Well, Councilman Biggs, actually just playing off of what the Deputy Mayor said, an officer and a gentleman. So, great movie, but it's more fitting for a Navy officer. You and I go back before our days on the council together. I think we served on either the Veterans Committee or the Memorial Day Parade Committee. And at that point, when I first met you, I knew that you would be an outstanding advocate for the town of Wethersfield, and you didn't let me down your term on the council. I kind of agree with Dan. I don't think we've disagreed on many things. You know, this council, I say it about all the folks that I've served with over the years. I'd say about 95% of the stuff we do, we could either put on consent or we vote in unison together. Even some of those that we disagree on, we always work out a compromise, and while it may be a bad issue at whatever point or a good issue that we're being challenged on, you always bring, common sense to the debate. And for that, we appreciate it, but, we'll miss the dialogue back and forth. You've always been one open to suggestions. And you mentioned, being a good public servant is answering calls, emails, text messages. And, I don't think there was a time that I texted you or sent an email out to everybody where you didn't respond back with received or, yep, and, we always had a conversation. Wishing you all the best in your service. Please be safe. Don't keep the entire town of Weathersfield in your mind while you're serving. Keep your wife and your children in your mind first. So, thank you for your service. And on behalf of the town, it wouldn't be official if we don't present it. It doesn't happen if there's not a photo of it, they say, as my kids say. But this is presented to you, Mr. Ryan Biggs, in appreciation for your dedicated service to the town of Weathersfield, awarded this 17th day of January 2023 on behalf of the entire town council. Thank you so much. So what else can we put on consent while he's here?
I can't believe you got a plaque before me.
I think Dan has one, too, from his time as deputy mayor.
Yeah, from the 70s.
Anybody else with any council comments? I've got a couple things. I just want to, first I want to talk to the town manager on one that came to my attention tonight, and maybe we can do a follow-up. The keys to the meadows being, I think an email had gone out from the town manager's office. I've heard from a couple folks, believe it or not, some people still do not have email or access to email, but there are property owners in the meadows. One or two names were given to me. I'll share those with you after the meeting. But it also came to my attention that the MDC has property in the meadows. So we may want to reach out to folks at the MDC just to ensure that, they have access to whatever they need to have access to. Some good news to report. Senator Blumenthal was here in Weathersfield last week. Thank you to some of the council men and women who were there to greet the senator. A couple months ago, we did receive a grant, or our volunteer fire department received a grant of about $248,000, which we used for the breathing apparatuses and some equipment at the firehouse. The senator wanted to come in, talk about the needs of the town, but in particular the needs of the fire department. I think we shared with him that day that just like any other municipal fire department across Connecticut and the nation right now, we are faced with a shortage and looking for volunteers and recruits to come and serve on behalf of the town and the fire department. The senator was pretty receptive of our ask, and we'll be looking at what options are out there to be able to attract and retain volunteers for the fire department. There was something the other day in the town manager's report, and it actually had also come to my attention. There's a group called Love 146 that's been pretty active over the years. This is an issue that is near and dear to Weathersfield's heart because it was showcased on some shows in the past about child trafficking, human trafficking that is going on. Unfortunately, the Berlin Turnpike over the years was notorious for this type of behavior. Thanks to the efforts of a number of state legislators over the years, the work with the state police and local police, that has been being cracked down upon. But there is an anti-child trafficking forum on Wednesday, January 26th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., and it's at the Silas Middle School. If there are folks in town that would like to get information on this epidemic that's going around, please show up. It's very informative. It will shed some light on what we as residents, but more importantly, what our police and state police can do to end this. And like I said, they had reached out to the town, and the town wanted to help them, so we are going to host that on the 26th. And with that,
Hey, Mike, can I just
Yep.
make a quick comment? I had no clue that was even going to happen. It's almost serendipitous. I actually work with, closely with a group called ARC. It's the Association of the Recovery of Children. The chief actually mentioned that human trafficking was starting to creep up again, especially on the Berlin Turnpike through Newington to Weathersfield and to Hartford. And it would, like I said, I had no clue you were going to mention this tonight. We were actually talking about potentially hosting a training. They actually come in and they train municipalities, law enforcement, teachers, concerned citizens, and it's a 6-day course that I'm working with the chief on certain dates. I know there's a minimum requirement of participants plus the cost of the teacher to come out, but I was actually going to bring this up at the next council meeting when we were a little bit firmer, but I figured why not now that given that. So just wanted to kind of throw that in the water. But there definitely is a crazy need for it. I had no clue until I started working more closely with it myself.
well, if you want to share the information that Love 146 is doing with
Yeah.
ARC, and, I think if we had reached out to our chief of police and the police department as well, I think they would find it pretty informative.
We were working, I was trying to get Newington and Weathersfield Police kind of together to do it, to kind of tackle it as almost like a regional problem. So,
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll give you more as I get more details, but give me the dates on that. I'd love to attend that.
Great.
Thank you.
And just two other things. Representatives Kerry Wood and Amy Bello, along with our two state senators, Senator Fonfara and Senator Matt Lesser, are hosting a Weathersfield Day up at the Capitol. This is a day for us to lobby on behalf of funding for school construction and other issues of importance to Weathersfield. So I invite all of you up here tonight. It is on Wednesday, the 25th, 11 o'clock at the Legislative Dining Hall. It's a day to not only showcase what Weathersfield has to offer, but more importantly, to get the ear of our legislative delegation and others on some of the priorities for our town. And then finally, tomorrow morning at, I believe, 8 o'clock is the State of the Town address at the Keeney Center. This is hosted by the Weathersfield Chamber of Commerce. It's an opportunity for not only myself, the town manager, I think Joya Zach will be presenting on some of the economic development that has gone on. Superintendent of Schools, Mike Emmett, will talk about the school budget that's coming up, as well as other issues of importance for the Board of Ed. So if you guys can make it tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, the State of the Town at the Keeney Center. That's it. Anything else from anybody?
Is that the community center or the Keeney Center?
Keeney.
Keeney.
I think it's Keeney.
Oh, okay. Please say community.
Keeney Community
Keeney, yeah.
on Main Street. Okay. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Presley.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just a few items under my report tonight. In your packet, you will find a presentation of contracts. This is a charter requirement, actually, that, to my knowledge, has not been presented to you all, but what the charter says is at the first meeting in January of every year, there will be a presentation of contracts, and that's both labor contracts and other contracts, financial contracts that we have in the town. What we've done for this year, as this is something that staff has not been asked to do before, we're presenting you just a quick overview of all of the collective bargaining agreements and their status right now, as well as any employment agreements, and you can see mine and the chief's listed there. In addition, you have all of the contracts that have been approved, more or less by this council dating back to November of '21 through the present, and where those contracts are and the duration. We're going to work to expand this, so as you look at this, if there's other information that you'd like to see related to contracts for this report that we'll do every year, please let me know that, and we will, going to be working with staff to make sure that we expand that so it's as useful as possible for you. But we didn't want to not do it, as it is a charter requirement. So for this year, this is our first cut at it, but I'm happy to take any comments or suggestions you might have now or in the future. Dan?
Yeah, thank you. The only thing that would be very helpful is, I know we see term, if we could have, when the contract began and when it expires, just add a column in there, so we can see those that are expiring and how long they've been in process. Like, if I look at this one, just as a purchase of Everbridge emergency notification, it says 3 years, and meeting date doesn't, I don't know what that means, 2/22.
Meeting date was the council meeting date that it was approved.
So then it's 3 years from then. So, yeah, if we just have it like a term
Yep.
date
No,
or
I think it's a good
something.
point. Absolutely.
Thank
Starting, yeah, end date, yep.
Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, if I could just expand on what Councilor O'Connor was mentioning, the first item on the list is a very long-term lease, and it has a interim term, I believe it's 10-year intervals, where there's an opportunity to amend the contract. And if you could put that in there so that we know when it's coming up.
Yep.
It's a short window of opportunity, and I'd like to have council be aware of when they could act.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
I had just a question. We had some consultants come in to talk about the volunteer fire department.
Yes.
Did we have a contract for those consultants?
Yes.
I don't know if it's in here. I was looking at it the other day.
Right at the bottom. No, I'm sorry. No, I'm wrong.
That's because that was a contract that fell underneath the threshold for the council approval, and so we did that administratively.
Okay.
So that's why it doesn't fall into that, because there's a dollar amount threshold.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why, but we did enter into that. The draft report is with us now. The chief and his staff have done an initial review. I'm meeting with them, and then we're going to be presenting that to you all probably in February.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
And then the other item under my report is a breakdown of Millwood's infrastructure improvement. The larger item of this is that, as you all know, we received an Urban Act grant that was provided thanks to the work of Senator Fonfara, and I know the governor's office was involved with this. But we received a $4 million allocation. 1.7 million of that was specifically for the library renovations. The other funds were just listed as infrastructure. That was the initial guidance that we were given. Some of that money you've already approved for some Weathersfield safety improvements down in Old Weathersfield. There was the crosswalk that was done in front of Keeney Center. There's some additional infrastructure projects, about $810,000, that has been allocated thus far. We had a follow-up meeting with Senator Fonfara just to get some direction on the remainder of the funds, what their intent was, because obviously we want to make sure that we're doing what it is that they intended for this funding. And what we received from both the senator and the governor's chief of staff was that the intent for the majority of the remainder of the funds was for Parks and Recreation. And specifically, they saw the opportunity to do several improvements in Millwoods Park. With that in mind, we sat down with staff. We worked through a number of projects, and I know that the park board has also been engaged. And so there's a list of projects. Kathy's here to speak to it, and your packet also includes a map of the area that, if you got it printed out, it doesn't come out right because it's a larger map, but if you look online, it does show the full Millwoods Park area and the areas of the improvements. But Kathy can speak to them if you have any questions, but this is really just to get your feedback. If this makes sense to you all, if there's other things you'd like to see instead before we move forward, because we need to supply the list of projects back to the state before we move forward with anything. So that's just the check-in with you all to say, Does this make sense? Any other ideas, anything else that we haven't thought about?
Talk about this now.
Sure.
Are they firm on the Millwoods requirement? Could it be recreation in another town park?
They were pretty firm on Millwoods, yeah.
There was a comment by one of the residents about the location of the pickleball courts, which I thought made a lot of sense, actually, to have them at another location, but you think they would squash that idea?
Again, if there are individual aspects of this that we don't feel belong here, I mean, there's an opportunity there. I think one of the aspects with that location, and Kathy, if you want to come up and speak to it, but the proximity to the tennis courts and the parking was one of the driving factors. Yes, there'll be some filling that will need to be done there, but Derek looked at it and costed it out based upon that need, so, but, Kathy, you want to speak to the pickleball courts especially?
It was, we looked at a couple different locations in Millwoods for the pickleball courts, and with Derek's help, that was the best place to put it for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. There was a suggestion made that we could incorporate the 4 pickleball courts at Webb, where there's already an existing parking lot, and try to save some of the Millwood space for open space. I know we had talked about expanding parking in that very close area between the tennis court and the pickleball court, so, you know, maybe you could increase the parking, whatever, but if it's a firm requirement by, you know, the grant, I guess that's not an option. I just thought it kind of made sense with moving it to another location, but that's just kind of passing along what I think everybody got the same email.
I think this is more of a, I don't know if Kathy can answer or Fred, but I don't remember if it was Derek, but I do recall hearing that, I want to say it's the plumbing in Mill Woods is in dire need. Is it like, as far as the pipes go for the water for the physical swimming pond? Is that something that is coming up on repair? Because, you know, to Tom's point, you're allocating $300,000 for pickleball courts when we could put them somewhere else. And if any infrastructure on the pool, it's a huge swimming pool. I used to work there, but if I would think that would be dollars better spent than pickleball courts. So is there any info on, as far as how good or bad the infrastructure of the swimming pool is?
The tanks are on the list. The
Yeah.
filtration chlorine tanks, 140,000.
I mean,
Not on this list.
Yeah, I know. Would that fall within the parameters of the Urban Act grant if we wanted to improve the infrastructure of the swimming pool?
It could certainly, like I said, we're going to run this back by DECD and Senator Fonfara and his folks, but I think what we're trying to do, one of the reasons why we didn't go with those are that those are things that, yeah, we probably need to do over the next few years. However, you're not going to see that improvement.
Okay.
So we're trying to pick things that, that folks would see an immediate benefit to, the pipes under the ground.
Yeah.
And the plumbing, the aspects needed, yes. And absolutely, we could go back to them and say, you know, can we spend that on this and, you know, use this money for that purpose? Absolutely, we can do that. And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
You know, we're here to ask, you know, for guidance on what you all would
Well,
like.
I mean, again, if we don't have pipes, there's no pool to look at. So,
No,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's kind of,
We may not see it, but we definitely would smell it. So this is just recommendation.
yeah.
Councilman Biggs and Councilman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. So for this diagram, is it just the items that are yellow and white that are the updates that will take place? Because I guess my thought process is that it's good to add, and we kind of had this issue with adding fields to our town.
Yeah.
It's good to have new, but what about what we already have and updating that to make that feasible to use? Like, my biggest thing about here is when I go play softball here, we come in a paved road and then we go into a gravel parking lot area. Like, is that something that's going to be fixed as well? Can we could just pave the whole thing rather than having partial gravel? And if we're implementing and putting sidewalks and more parking, why not just do everything right at the same time? Is that like something that's like there? I just wasn't sure with the yellow and white if those are the only things being touched in your preliminary plan kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't have the map in front of me with the colors, but regarding the parking, the parking to be paved is on the entrance road going in, and the parking by the softball field would still stay gravel at this time. We were trying to add more facilities to the park and more parking, because everyone knows we need more parking in Mill Woods. So we also proposed in this infrastructure to put a parking lot between the pickleball courts and the tennis courts, and also at the upper fields up towards the dog park area. So, but again, gravel. Part of it is because it's so expensive to pave, and we were trying to think environmentally too, that the gravel is much better for rainwater, for all of the things when you drain off. So we were looking at it that way too. Would we love to pave the park in some of the parking lots? Sure, because it'd make parking a lot easier. But if working with Derek, it's just a lot of money to pave.
Now, so too, on those fields, you'll notice that all the fields that have the drainage issues currently, that is being addressed. Those are the top two projects, because that's been a recurring issue. So those ball fields, both the Little League Classic ball field and the upper fields and the soccer and softball fields, all the drainage is going to be improved as part of this project.
Got it. So that's to the next point. Like, so I understand the gravel being cheaper in the immediate, but how often are we refilling and releveling and whatnot with the gravel? Is that something that over time it's still utilizing the same money we'd use to pave with everything else getting paved?
I don't have the breakdown of those costs, but Kathy, you might be able.
They generally just dress it up a little bit in the spring, the gravel parking lot by the softball fields.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Hill?
Thanks, Mayor, appreciate it. And Kathy, thank you for your help with this, and Derek, and obviously to our state delegation, as well as the governor's office, for kind of help securing these dollars. And this plan that we have here looking at it, it's these dollars are going to go very far here. Specifically, I mean, we talk about things like drainage, and not the sexiest thing in the world, but we'll now be able to kind of use like these three fields that are sometimes you can use them, sometimes you can't. But just one thing I did want to flag for the rest of council is that we're still kind of in need of, specifically in the spring, more fields. And that's just literally playing space, because whether it be baseball, lacrosse, soccer, you name it, just more spaces. So I know we still have some ARPA dollars that, I would love to kind of steer towards that, but though we are kind of really improving Millwood's facility with this, the actual fields, I still think there is still a demand within town. Just something I wanted to flag for everyone here.
And we had a lot of discussion on that.
I bet.
And you could actually put a multi-use field. We, as part of this design and what you have laid out here, we have the ability to fit at least one additional soccer lacrosse multi-use field at Millwoods, potentially two, depending on how we lay things out. So that's something we're looking at as well, but I think the price tag on that would have used up all of this money. So we're trying to be as, stretch it out as far as we could right now, and then whether it's ARPA funds or something else, we can look to the future to kind of add another field. But that's an option,
Yep.
that we could look
Appreciate
at.
that. Thank you.
Councilman O'Connor first, and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I do have a question for you, Kathy. I recall at a council meeting, I don't know, it's been a year or so ago, a family came in here and they were talking about building a bridge connecting those two.
It's part of it.
And now I see this 100,000, I thought they were raising funds and they just wanted our permission to be able to do that. Are they now asking us to pay for that?
Well, we looked at it as a partnership,
Okay.
and the cost of the footbridge is probably going to be over $200,000. They've raised $120,000, and we were trying to, making that footbridge would just open up that whole end of the park, and we thought it was a good investment to use some of these funds to get that project moving forward.
No, and that's great, so thank you, I just wanted to clarify that. The other question I had for you is, as Councilor Hill said, I would personally much rather see some of that money going into finding another field, because there's no additions here, there's just improvements, and we still have the issue of being short field space. So while we're improving these, which is great, we're still, haven't moved the needle at all in regards to finding more available space. And so one of the questions I also had for you is, I noticed for the bocce courts, you want to add lights. Does that have to go through a P&Z? Does that have to get a neighbor approval or anything like that?
We'll look into that, but that's at the end of the park that already has all the lights. The skate park has lights, the Little League field has lights, and so does the softball field. So we were looking at it as just kind of finishing up that area.
Well, as someone who's had some experience with attitudes towards lights, I understand that, but I just wonder if that's going to cause an issue. I mean, we had people coming up here complaining about Keisha Farms and what we want to do there, and about the lights, and those lights are indoors, and people still had issues with it. So I do wonder if that is going to raise a flag, because I do remember even when they were building the Little League field many moons ago, the lighted field there by Softball Field 1, I think it is, residents had come out and complained about them putting lights on that. And so I don't know if that's something you're factoring in and whether or not we can even do that.
The good thing is the trees have gotten taller, and the area where the bocce courts are is kind of behind in the area where the picnic table, the picnic pavilion is. So it's an area that is already kind of encircled.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir on that one, but they still came out. So. All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments to either town manager or Kathy on this? Councilwoman Carbone?
Hi. So I see on here on the map that there's, I don't know how, maybe I missed this, the future secondary park driveway and parking.
That's just an idea for the future. As staff were giving ideas and Derek was working with us, it was just, right now we have one entrance into the park.
Yeah.
So it was just an idea of looking, do we want another exit or entrance into the park? So they were just looking at some future items just to look at.
Okay, so that's not happening.
It's not in this plan.
Okay. And then, so are you, I'm just curious, because maybe I missed, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling that great today, I apologize. If you are actively looking at space on this map to put in new fields?
What we're looking at doing is the parking lot that we want to build out by the dog park that will have parking for the upper fields. Out in that area, we can fit a multi-use field.
Okay.
So we thought that if we got the parking in, and then later on we looked at ways to raise money for the field, we'd at least already have the parking. And so we have a future plan, if we ever got the money for the field, we'd pave the parking lot. So we're looking at it a lot of different ways.
So it would be south of that new parking lot that you're proposing to go in there?
In that area, yes.
And then I just have one more question again about that footbridge. Is that a very large bridge?
It's a long bridge.
Doesn't sound, okay.
Yeah, it's a long span, which drives us nuts, and we're up high.
Okay.
So we have to go all the way across the whole span, and there's very particular engineering
Okay,
directions to do that.
$200,000
Yeah.
is a lot for a
Yeah,
little
it's,
footbridge. Yeah.
it even surprised us how expensive it was.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Just one comment.
Sure.
Just back on the footbridge, Kathy. My recollection is that the group that was working to secure funds, at the time, they sounded pretty positive that they were going to find additional grants. So I'd hope that we would, kind of see if they can come up with more money before we throw another 100,000 at it. I understand the need to get it done, and I think they've been working on it for 7 or 8 years, maybe longer. But they did sound like, they were motivated to go after other funds, so, that'd be great if they can come up with some more, but,
And we've been working with them on that.
yeah,
As things may come up.
right, okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So is this just up for consideration? So this isn't set in stone?
Nothing set in stone here. This is what staff is proposing based upon the direction that we received from the senator's office and from the governor's office, and so we just wanted to see if this works for you all, if there's anything you'd like us to take out, something else to put in, and we can present that back to the state and see if this complies with what they're looking for.
Okay, so this isn't going to be done tonight, so if we have
No,
a
no, no.
discussion and want to add,
Yep.
take away, it can be done later? Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
There is a time commitment, though, we have from the state. that-
Yeah, they want us to commit to the funds. Obviously, the library's commitment, we're there. The money we've spent on the roads, we've done that part, but they want us to come back with some clear direction on what we're going to do for Millwoods Park as the next phase.
So if we go back to them with this and say, yeah, let's do that, can we change it or alter it after that point?
I don't think there's any prohibition against making adjustments if we need to. Ideally, they don't want you to once you submit what you're going to do the project on, but we've already made some adjustments based upon the feedback that we've received, so.
All right, thank you.
Seeing no other questions? I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about the CIF meeting we had with the DECD. In your comments, I'll be happy to.
Sure, I mean, we can, so there's another Community Investment Fund grant that we're proposing, looking at two things, actually. There's going to be several rounds of this grant fund, at least 10. There's been one round so far. The second round closed about a week ago, and that round is $95 million the state has. There's only certain communities that are eligible, and Weathersfield is one of those communities that can submit for those grants. We did submit a large project that you all are aware of that was presented at a previous meeting for the community center. And then we met with the Historical Society and the state individual who's the director of that grant program about ideas for the Historical Society, but they really talked about expanding it to include all of Old Weathersfield and the connectivity and how we can work to make the whole, all of Old Weathersfield more accessible to the more vulnerable communities. So they want us to think bigger, not smaller. So we're actually looking at convening a meeting of stakeholders to talk about a more holistic approach to that whole downtown effort. And they said there's no limit on these grants in terms of what we ask for, and there's also no match. So it's a rare opportunity. And again, this is going to be round 3 of 10 rounds at least, they said. There could be up to 20 rounds depending on the funding. So we're working with staff and with our stakeholders to try to come up with a comprehensive approach to downtown, but also we're looking at future rounds for Silas, Deane, and connecting that down into the downtown area. So we're trying to be as complete as we can with this approach and really hoping to take advantage as much as we can of this opportunity. Want to cover what you want? Anything else?
Nope. Sounds good. Yes, sir.
When you say that our community is able to apply for these, how many communities? Are we like on a short list? Or?
Yes, it's a pretty short list, and it's mostly the more urban areas and the areas that you would, when you think of, the underserved populations, it's more of your cities that are on that list. Weathersfield is a grandfathered locality that, we're one of a handful that are in there that we don't really, if you look at the communities, we're not really the same makeup as a lot of the other communities, but it's I don't know, it's a legislative thing that they said that these communities get to be part of that, so we have an opportunity there, and we're being encouraged to, again, be very aggressive and ask for a lot. We might not get it all. Like the first round, they said 75% of the folks that applied got a portion of what they asked for, but now they can apply again in future rounds and show progress over time. And that's kind of what they want to see, but they want to see the full picture, and they want to see that we've thought about the full picture, and that requires a lot of cooperation and working with stakeholders. So it's an exciting opportunity, and I think we need to take full advantage of it.
I'm glad that it's expanding into New Weathersfield.
Yes, absolutely.
Just put that out there.
Yep. And the three criteria that they stress to us, underserved population, does it impact them? And yes, definitely with the new Weathersfield connecting to old Weathersfield, and then Silas Deane Highway and Berlin Turnpike, we can definitely bring in an underserved population into that. Tourism and economic development, obviously, we check those both off. Tourism for old Weathersfield, and then economic development, we're looking at Silas Deane Highway. And then again, we as a municipality and nonprofits can apply for it. So we have ample opportunities to put in requests for this funding.
Just a quick question. Did you include that plan you gave us when you were interviewing with the trees and all of that for the Silas Deane?
So this initial round, we are looking at, the next round, we're focused on Old Weathersfield. The fourth round, we're targeting Silas Deane and connecting in. So yes, it includes all those things that I presented to you all, but that's going to be round 4 because we have a consultant helping us update some of the plans we have for that.
Good.
Yep.
Councilman?
Thank you. Just comment, Mayor, and thank you to the town manager and staff. This is an unprecedented opportunity. It's a big deal. As long as the years I've been involved in, I'm old. There is so much money available at the federal and the state level, and I'm just so glad that we're at the table applying for these funds, getting some of these funds, like the $4 million. There's a lot to be had. This is a really great opportunity for Weathersfield, so thank you for what you and the staff is doing to kind of put us out front for getting these funds. So thank you.
With that, Sue? Town Clerk Communications?
Yes, we are working on the new agenda management system and getting trained for that, so it's pretty exciting. It's kind of hard to watch everything in progress and not being able to really work on it, but I know that once it gets in place, it'll make things a lot easier and simplify things, and we're looking forward to getting that on board as soon as possible, and it will make this much easier.
Great.
Everybody here.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to council action. Item B1, there were no bids before us. We do have a consent agenda that is included in your packet of information. I don't think there were any appointments or resignations except for tree warden, correct? Yep, as a town staff. Bids, you guys were able to look over the fireworks bid waiver. And then, I don't know if anybody had any questions on the sidewalk program extension. We'll be happy to entertain any questions or comments, concerns with those. Seeing none, we also have the minutes from December 19th.
I'll move the consent agenda if no one's.
Motion's
Second.
been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. No ordinances or resolutions before us. Unfinished business. We do have 2. This has been discussed in the past, and I think the town manager has some comments on ARPA funds.
Thank you, Mayor. So for your consideration this evening, as you all know, you've allocated 3% of the total ARPA funds at my request, for what we've deemed strategic investments. Those include some of the things you've already approved, such as going out to bid for a facilitator to do a strategic plan for the council. It also includes the agenda management system that the clerk just referenced, as well as some other projects that we've been working on. The next major project is the website redesign that we are working on the RFP for and getting some comments back on that. And then we also have some additional programs that we're looking at expanding the use of. One is the permitting system that allows for all permits to be done online and payments to be done online. There's another phase of that we need to implement. Some of these, particularly the website design and others, we're not really quite sure where the prices are going to come in on this, because this is it's going to be a big job. We can cost it out the best we can, but the reality is we don't know where that's going to come in. What I'm asking for here is if you all could consider just to budget and appropriate the balance of the strategic investment funds, and that's $80,422. Those contracts will come back to you for approval as far as the web design and anything else we do there. But I just wanted the ability, we don't go out to bid unless the money's been budgeted, and right now this money's not been budgeted. It's just sitting in the ARPA account. So if it's possible, I was going to come to you and say $50,000 for the web design, but I don't think that's going to be enough, and I don't know what is going to be enough. So if we could just, it's $80,000 left of the 3% that has not been allocated. So if the council would see fit to go ahead and budget and appropriate that money, and then again, come back to you with the actual bid for web services once we go through the RFP process. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, Fred, could you kind of give us an overview of the strategic plan facilitator? What's the role, and is this like an ongoing, annual fee that's going to be from now on to maintain the strategic plan, or if you just
Sure.
give me a little explanation?
Yeah, so a strategic planning process of this type really requires an external person to be brought in, because I, as town manager, could do it. I've done them in the past for other organizations. But as town manager, it's better that I participate in the process as well and not be the facilitator. Facilitator has to be neutral and has to really be the point to bring out the information that's required and go through the process. This is not a continuing cost. This is a one-time cost that we may be revisiting once every 3 to 5 years at the discretion of the council. We might bring somebody back to kind of do a refresh, but it wouldn't be the same amount. It's been a long time since you all have done any kind of strategic plan, dating back to 2012, and you all being the council that was seated at that time. And I don't think it was as an in-depth process as what I'm proposing here. So this would be a one-time fee. The updates will be done internally, yearly. So we will do yearly updates of the plan and report outs, and those will be done internally by myself and staff. But then there will come a time when we're going to need to do a full retreat again and kind of do a check-in, because the conditions change over time.
So you're suggesting an annual review of, these were our milestones, and,
Absolutely.
we hit the mark on one, but the others are lacking.
Yeah, so what'll come out of this is a very clear implementation plan with 1, 2, and 3-year milestones and objectives that we want to achieve, and we will report on those yearly at a minimum, and say how we're doing, if we're doing good or not, not so great at some of these. But then we will then, like I said, and then we can adjust the plan too, because again, things change, priorities change. So we'll be able to do that internally on a year-to-year basis, but periodically we would bring a facilitator back in to do a major refresh, if you will, similar to what we do now with the plan of conservation and development.
Maybe at some point in the future, I could get a copy of something that you've done in the
Sure.
past. I'm curious, like, I've read ours, and it's very broad, and.
Very broad.
It still is true, everything that's in there, we want to make it a better place and so on, but
But there's
it's
no
not very
actions.
specific,
Yeah,
you know.
it's not action-oriented.
Right.
So just to give you an idea, I did this in my previous location, and we did the retreat with the board, and then we came back, and they came up with these 7 priority areas. Then leadership team staff got together, and they went to their departments, they said, if that's their goal, how do we get there, and what do the next 3 years look like for us to get there? And they outlined real implementation steps we would take. We put those together. We had over 50 implementation steps for the first 3 years across those 7 priorities. And then we brought that back to the board and said, does this get you where you want to be? Made some tweaks to it, and then said, okay, this is it. We put the plan in writing, and we said, go. And then that then drove budget decisions. It drove staffing decisions, how we prioritize what we do. And even during COVID, because we did the plan and then COVID hit the year after. By year 3, we had accomplished 93% of those action items. So it really helps and it works and it gets us moving in that direction. Now, depending on how broad your vision is, those first 3 years are not going to get you all the way to the target, but the whole idea is to move us in that direction and then check back in and say, is this still where we want to go?
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Any questions for the town manager on this? No? I just want to weigh in and say, one of the priorities that we asked of you as new town manager, and it holds true to what Sue had said earlier about the new software upgrades in her office, is trying to make it more efficient town government so that our staff, while just like with the VoIP phones, you're not busy chasing down people, writing messages, delivering handwritten messages to a person on the second floor or downstairs or anything like that. So that, I think all these improvements to not only our software, but website, online permitting, I know is a big issue. Folks coming in, spending hours talking to department heads and staff about permits that are required, that are needed. Anything that can help alleviate some of the time that our staff has spent literally at the window talking to constituents and residents is better served by more productive work through these new systems that we're looking to put into place. With that said,
Do you want to make a motion, or you want to make a motion? Go ahead.
I have one more comment before we act. I'd be glad to make the motion, but the motion doesn't, unless I'm missing it, it doesn't talk about the strategic plan. It says the webpage redesign and
Yeah.
online permitting.
Strategic plan money's already been allocated you've already budgeted and appropriated that.
Okay.
So,
It's just the 80,000,
yeah,
okay.
exactly.
yeah, on
Yep.
So,
the page after, you'll
Yep.
see the remaining balance, 80,422.
so I'll make a motion to budget and appropriate 80,422 of ARPA revenue replacement funds previously set aside for strategic investment for the purpose of soliciting bids and contracts for the remaining strategic initiative projects. These projects will include town webpage redesign and funding support for online permitting services.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. No problem. And we're revisiting the initiative put forth, I think, at our last in-person, or last meeting in December. This is the Weathersfield Recognition Guidelines. Thank you, Councilman Lesser and Councilman O'Connor, for sitting down and working together on this. My question to you, Mr. Town Manager, the highlighted in red is a product of that conversation?
Yes, Mayor. I received a list of items that were discussed. I tried to capture them all the best I can, but that's open for discussion here. There were a number of items, but you'll see some of the major changes were largely around the consistency of the committee itself. And so as what was originally proposed, there would be no actual council members as part of that. This has changed to suggest that there would be one council member from representing each party, and then one citizen member appointed by the council from each party as well. I think the goal there was to make this non-political and to make sure that there weren't decisions being made along political lines. And then that there would be categories for the applications received. And some examples that were given there were sports, arts, and entertainment, authors, science, and community service, that the town council would have final approval of the recommendations. There was the discussion about the awards night itself, and that there would be tickets that would be sold for that event, and that with the exception of the awardees and their immediate family, everyone else would have to purchase tickets similar to some other events that we have here in town. And any proceeds that might be there from the sales of the tickets after the expense has been paid would be donated to Weathersfield charities. And that they also made the distinction that no one currently in elected office is eligible for an award. They must be out of office a minimum of 5 years to be considered. Those are the major changes.
Councilman Lusser?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Town Manager, for capturing those ideas. I wanted to thank Councilor O'Connor, who got up early to meet with me a couple weeks ago and had a lot of great ideas. Dan, I really appreciate you working with me on this and improving what I had put out before. This is a better product, and it really, one of our major goals when we met together is to take all politics out of it, and truly, which was the goal originally, but this does it better and in writing, truly to recognize those outstanding contributions that Weathersfield residents have made. And Dan also provided a wonderful possible example that some of you may have seen that was in the Hartford Current about a week and a half ago about a Weathersfield teen, I think she goes to Silas Middle School, who donates blood every year on her birthday to help those in need. And it was a wonderful article, and Dan made the suggestion, this seems like the type of person we should be finding a way to honor, and I couldn't agree more. So thanks, Dan, thanks, Town Manager, and I'm hoping that the council will see fit to pass these guidelines, and then maybe February, March, we can appoint a counselor from each party, and each party can appoint an individual and have 4 people, and the committee can start working on this. So thank you again, Councilor O'Connor and Town Manager, for capturing it. If we missed anything, let us know.
Thank you. No, and thank you, Kenny, for including me on that. I did have some questions as I read it the first time, and then when I was rereading it, there were a few things that weren't included in this, and there's a thought of mine that we can do that. We can just, you and I meet again and fine tune a little more, or I can share some of the things. Like one of them is, there is a phrase in here about honoring somebody who serves the town. And, you know, that to me causes me concern, because that does open it up to politics. We could have someone who serves the town and happens to be a large contributor to a political party. And so I wouldn't be comfortable with that saying serves the town. I think it should be a resident in the town. It's a Weathersfield recognition, not somebody who serves the town. The other one is, it's missing the terminology about or current candidate for elected office. So we mentioned that you can't be in office. And then there's even the possibility in this one that talks about a council member can actually nominate themselves on behalf of themselves, and I would remove that phrase altogether because I didn't understand that one. Where it said on behalf, like I can't imagine a council member doing this, but it looked like they had the ability to recommend themselves.
Well, they wouldn't be eligible.
But they wouldn't be eligible
They
for
wouldn't be
5
eligible.
years.
I know, so then why even put it in there?
I agree with all those changes.
And then the other one, though, is, and this is just, as I reread this, is today, the mayor does proclamations all the time. I know he did one when Weathersfield Youth Lacrosse started and had their first opening ceremonies. He came and read a proclamation on them. And my fear with, as I go through this, I love the concept of the keys to the town. I love the idea of raising money and maybe in doing this. We talked about doing this early in December so that we could, it'd be after the elections, and that fund could be raised for the food bank or maybe the backpack, or whatever, the Christmas giving, those programs that are out there where we can really help residents in need at a very important time. And when we start looking at things like presentations or procedure, or ceremonial recognition letters and the proclamations, I start to just get concerned that it will water down the value of the actual keys to the town. If we're giving a presentation or proclamation every single council meeting, it tends to water down the value of what these other people have contributed, and it may also cause some people to say, well, I'm not going to go to this banquet because they'll just honor someone else next week anyways, and maybe I'll show up for that one. And so part of me is that since the mayor does a lot of these proclamations, are we better suited to just have it for the keys to the town only, and bringing in those other clauses that really make sure this can't be political? And the final one was, I thought we had discussed that it had to be unanimous 4-0 vote, and that's not in there either.
Agree with all those changes.
Well, I don't know how to make all those motions. That's why I said we could take it off, and I'll do it again, but.
Well, before we go to your comments, do we want to amend it tonight? Or, I mean, you've been working on this since first meeting in December. Want to kind of,
I'm ready to move it forward, but if we have trouble capturing Dan's amendments, we can do it next time. If the town manager needs time to get those in writing, we can wait a couple weeks. I'm okay with that, and certainly, I agree with, I agree with all Dan's points.
okay. Can you
I'll get this over to you, Kenny.
jot it down?
You can send it to.
All right, I'll send it, yep. Yeah, I can get that to you by the end of the week.
We meet again in a few weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
The only thing I wanted to add, we had a brief discussion about keeping track of all these awards that we give out, and I don't think it needs to be in the procedures, but I'd like to see something established where maybe the town clerk would maintain a list of people that have received proclamations, awards, keys, whatever. And I'm referencing that situation I had where a resident was named on a scoreboard, the scoreboard got replaced, the name went away, and boy, it was a real struggle to try and find out how that person's name actually got up on that scoreboard. And it doesn't have to be anything put in the actual procedures, but some kind of commitment from the town to at least maintain something going forward. I think it's a monumental task to try and go backwards and reconstruct everything, but at least going forward.
Agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And actually, I would take it even one step further. You mentioned a monumental task, but I think if we get an intern, a summer high school intern, or even a college intern, that maybe we can go through whatever records either Sue and her office at the town clerk's office has, what we may have in the town manager's office, just to be able to compile some of those, as far back as we can go, to find out some of the recognitions that we've done in the past, maybe break it up into different columns of proclamations, plaques, dedications. Councilman Forrest, in one of the meetings prior to this, talked about some plaques that the Little League field, I think, at Highcrest. So if anybody's been back there, you know, behind the backstop, there is a plaque right there. You don't really see it, you don't know much about it. So if we, you know, have the opportunity for a summer intern, this could be a project where we can start to build a dossier of those that have, you know, been, you know, honored for whatever reason in the past. And, you know, not only do we not want to, you know, we want to remember their service to the town, but maybe we want to inventory, you know, what is out there on behalf of the town for them.
Good point.
That, and I think maybe, you know, I think if we have a request for proclamations going back to however long, that we keep a folder of those, and maybe somebody we honor with the key to the town may have received a proclamation from the previous council 10, 15 years ago.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. And Councilman Lesser, thank you again for bringing this forward. It's a great idea. We can definitely button this up and make sure that it's, again, a unanimous vote. I think everybody's in favor of it. Just needs a couple tweaks here. And final action is the new business 5B. This is considering the waiving permit fees for the Weathersfield Housing Authority projects. I don't see Kate here, but as I mentioned earlier in my council report from the Housing Authority, this had been brought to the Housing Authority Board's attention, a requirement from the state for the CDBG grants. I do question, though, that this is from 2019, and I'm sure the numbers are increased, but this kind of gives those of us up here an idea of what costs of the work would be, including the fees associated with them that would be paid to the town. And, you know, unfortunately, it is a concern. I think I did talk to the board and ask them to contact their legislators or our legislators on this. I don't know if there has been an outcome of that since our meeting last week, hence the reason why this is still on our agenda. I don't know if there's anything you would like to add.
I would just add that this is not coming from the Housing Authority. Actually, Kate was, she pushed back and said, you know, we don't need them to waive the fees. We don't think that's appropriate. And the state said, well, no, we're requiring it because the localities where these projects are located need to show they have skin in the game, was the comment she got back. And so their hands were tied with respect to the ask. That's about all. I mean, it's, if they don't have the waiver of fees represented, they're not eligible to apply for the funds, is what the state has said. So it's not a federal requirement, it's not a HUD requirement, even though this is HUD funding, it's a state.
Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Mr. Town Manager, I'd just like to clarify, so this grant is applied for by the Weathersfield Housing Authority, not the town of Weathersfield.
That's
But
correct.
Do the funds come through the town? I thought,
Yeah, I think all
I thought
funds.
we manage the funds for them, or,
Yeah, we're a co-applicant, and I think we're the eligible entity, so I think it, I'll have to verify that with the finance director, but places I've been before, yes, the town would receive the funds and then distribute them, but.
so I understand that, you know, they can't apply for it without us waiving the fees, which seems to be $26,000 according to this ballpark. But the comment where they said they want to make sure the town has skin in the game, I think we have plenty of skin in the game. We waive their property taxes, we provide all kinds of services, education, fire, police.
Question.
It just goes on and on.
Yeah.
and I'll be a little blunt, I'd like to see a little bit more cooperation from the housing authority on how they maintain those properties, and some of it I don't think would cost a whole heck of a lot of money. I've been harping about stumps that have existed in those properties for, I don't know, they're almost completely rotted at this point, but it's just, any other street in Weathersfield, the people would have removed the stumps and planted grass, and I am dismayed where they don't provide any storage for the residents there for yard furniture, bicycles, and so forth. So what are the residents, what choice do they have but to leave them all in the yard? It doesn't look sightly, it's and then to say like, we don't give them enough, I disagree with the state's comment or whoever was saying that, but I think if we could get a little bit more, I don't have a problem waiving the fees, because obviously they can't get the grant if we don't waive the fees, but I'd like to see a little bit more cooperation on their side. I know that recently did some paving up there, up in the Lancaster area. They paved a bunch of driveway aprons. I don't believe that was grant money. That must come from their coffers, and I just wonder how much they have in their coffers and whether they can't pay for some of these other things that I find to be an annoyance, and it detracts from the condition of the town, if you will.
Councilman Biggs?
Thank you, Mayor. With this one, I understand the ask. I guess I'm just not comfortable with the aspect of, I'm pretty sure is there someone physically that is saying you have to waive this? Is it on paper somewhere? Is it, like, I'm just not comfortable saying, okay, John came to me and said that I need to waive this because someone told him we need to waive it so he could get the money. Like, I'm just not comfortable with that. And I would love, sort of what Deputy Mayor is saying about the partnership aspect is, I would like to see some factual evidence saying that this is something that needs to be done, because I just, we do partner with them. We do provide all these services. So us waiving $26,000 or whatever the number might be, it kind of seems like it's a unnecessary ask that is just someone trying to make up something that's not actually there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you may have something that's hard evidence or hard facts, some contractual agreements, whatever, but I feel like this is kind of going on a whim because someone feels a certain way. But they don't know the actual facts about what we are actually doing for the complex and the partnership we do have.
Yeah, I don't have it in writing from the state. What I have is, I asked for exactly what you asked for. I said I need something more concrete. What is the demand here? Kate responded back that she spoke specifically with Dominic Carew, Department of Housing, CDBG agent, to gain clarification on the waiving of the fees. And he stated that this is not a HUD requirement, this is a state Department of Housing requirement, and they are doing what they can to make the federal funds go as far as they can, and there just aren't enough funds to cover all the needs in Connecticut, so they consider that the town waiving permit fees the same as the housing authority paying for a consultant or architect, leveraging the resources to stretch the federal dollars further, therefore this is their requirement. She said, she asked Dominic, but there is no documentation showing the state requirement. This is the grant manager saying, if you don't have that, you're not going to get the grant, so.
So it sounds like what they're actually saying is that we want the town of Weathersfield to eat $26,000 so that can extend the money that we're going to give to you.
Correct.
It's not actually saying that if we don't give $26,000, they won't get the grant money. They're just saying it won't extend as far because you're minus $26,000, but since I have the authority to shut the funds down for you,
Well, he can say,
I'll
we're
shut
not
it
going to
down.
give it to you, we're going to give it to this other town that
Yeah.
is going to do that. I think that's what he's saying, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
did we want to, is there a deadline for Keaton Housing Authority on this?
There is a deadline. I'm not sure if it can wait till the next meeting. We do have an extra week in between the meetings.
Comfortable?
I'm not going to shut the grant down, but I'm not happy about it.
Right. And I think to your point, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we can have the Housing Authority and possibly the board, Housing Authority Board come in, and maybe we can talk about some of the concerns that you brought up, not only tonight, but in the past, for conditions of properties and possible funding that they have to take care of some of the unsightliness on their properties.
Side meeting. I'm not here.
Okay. Yep, we can do that. Okay, everybody, you guys are all good? Is there a motion tonight? If not, Oh.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. So is the actual number, this number here that's on the sheet, or is this going to be much higher because this is 3 years old, right?
It's going to be higher.
It's going to be higher. Yeah, that's
don't
based
have
upon
that
their
number.
latest estimate, and there's no current one. It's going to be dependent upon their funding. If they get the funding, then they'll go out to the architectural, and then you'll get the actual cost.
So we're just kind of giving them a blank check to get a grant?
Well, there's like, this is probably going to be pretty
So-
close, so
okay.
you're going to see increases. She referenced that there's also been a requirement for a generator now that wasn't included, so that's a pretty big expense for a facility like this. But then you'll probably looking at 20+% increase on the cost overall, and then you take the amount off of that. So it's probably going to be closer to 28,000, that we're looking at.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the permit fees aren't decided until they take a permit
Correct.
out.
Yeah, and it's got to be based upon the
Dollar value
actual
of the
dollar
permit.
value of the permit, yep.
Wow. All right.
anything else? You guys are all good? Okay. I'll make a motion to waive permit fees for Weathersfield Housing Project to renovate the Harvey Fuller Apartments per State of Connecticut Department of Housing requirement.
Second. Excuse me.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you. This is the opportunity for a second public comments portion. Again, I'll repeat, you're limited to 5 minutes. Just state your name and address. No need to fill out the form. Yes, sir.
Negrashu, 125 Walcott Hill Road. One thing I'd request, not even a request, I guess it's more of a demand, is I keep hearing about ARPA funds. It seemed like there was theoretical salvation at the idea of a grant of millions of dollars. My demand is when budget season comes around, which is relatively soon, the town either is forced to adopt a zero-based budget approach, or if there's incremental budgeting, that there's a column for budget request minus ARPA/grants and net. Because at the end of the day, one thing that bothers me as I keep coming to these meetings is every time I hear the word grant, well, the state's giving us money, the federal government's giving us money, Connecticut's giving us money, Department of whatever. That's all taxpayer funded. It doesn't matter if it's at the town level, state level, or federal level, that's coming from somewhere. So my demand is when budget season hits, that the ARPA funds, it should be net of those. I know it's not going to be because this town has got at least 20 years of incremental budgeting under its belt, and every single year something happens. But in seeing the $200,000 in the ARPA funds that's somehow dedicated to reval, which is shocking to me, that $200,000 of reval with a 10-year reval happening soon, my expectation is the mill rate goes down and the town budget comes down because of all these grants. If that's not the case and there's an incremental increase, I would hope that every single town council member and the town manager are held to account for why that is. I cannot fathom with that amount of money coming into this town, exclusive of what the town is getting for property taxes from grants, what we saw for what has happening at Mill Woods, I guarantee the Parks and Rec budget's not going down. It never has. There's a truck, $273,000 going to a dump truck. Is the budget going to be $273,000 less than it otherwise would have been? My expectation and my demand is zero-based budgeting and a reduction in the budget. I cannot fathom with the millions of dollars that this town has coming in through grants that are taxpayer-funded that we have incremental budget increases this year.
Mr. Young?
Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. I 100% agree with the man who was just up here talking about those grants being offset by our taxes. Instead of being raised, it should be brought down by that much. Disappointing, Mayor. How many freeloaders do we have connected to this town? We've got the Housing Authority connected with the state of Connecticut. We've got the Little Red Schoolhouse people. We've got the Kinney Center that costs us a fortune every year, thanks to Mr. Forrest, who's not here tonight, who voted for that. Who else do we have? Will we ever know, Mayor? Will we ever know?
Well,
If
actually,
there's
just
more?
one,
If
just
there's
one
more?
comment, Mr. Young. People living in subsidized housing are not freeloaders. They are residents of the town of Weathersfield.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want. I'll say what I want, because that's how I visualize it. They should be paying just as much as the rest of us pay. I don't know why people get such breaks. I continue to work. I'm 75 years old. What are these people doing? They should all get a job. We as taxpayers have spent so much money to educate people, and we continue doing that, training people, and here we're short of people for work. I don't understand it. But the fact remains, as I just started talking, we have organizations in this town that are on a free ride, an absolute free ride, and the rest of us have to pay for it. And of course, the 9 people sitting here will go along with that, because that's how you collect your votes. You don't collect your votes from me. I go and vote with write-ins. No, who on there do I want to vote for? It's just like the Board of Education. There was someone up here tonight talking about the Board of Education and how we need to do something with, the reimbursement rates? It's probably been 25 years since I've voted for somebody who sits on the Board of Education. That is how I feel about the leadership that we have in this town. I go and vote, but I don't vote for them. And that includes a group right here too. And when I see tonight how things operate, how many times, 6, 7, 8 months ago, it was discussed here where we found out that the Little Red Schoolhouse was being operated by people who don't pay rent, don't pay their electric. We pay for everything down there. We pay for the maintenance. And who are they? And they don't even have a lease. And then the town manager has a chat with them, and what'd you tell them? They should become a 401(3) or whatever the heck it is, C nonprofit, so then you can give them benefits? Why didn't you turn them into become a profitable organization and set them up on one of the empty stalls on the Silas Deane Highway with their art company and try to make money? Instead, you're encouraging them. I mean, that's what government does. They encourage a lot of people to stay on the dole, so they vote for you. And that's what it all boils down to vote for you. You haven't sold me yet on voting for you, and it's going to continue because I see nothing good coming out of this. As a taxpayer, now what, our taxes are due in what, another 2 weeks or so? Gloomy day for me when I have to go down there and pay my taxes. For what I pay and for what little I use. Yeah, I come down here and use some time, don't I? But the fact is, I pay. And I don't like it because I don't get, what do I get? Road service, garbage service. What else? Tonight you talked about parks. You talked about putting pavement on parks, the roads within the park. The people that drive in the park only go 5 or 10 miles an hour.
Mr. Young, your 5
Yes,
minutes are up.
Yes, thank you. But I think you should put asphalt on the highways where people drive faster and 100% of them drive out there. Thank you.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Can we point out it's before 9 o'clock?